The world of Varela was a place of light and color. Vast plains of silver grass swayed under skies that shifted between gold and deep blue. Towers of crystal rose high above the capital city, each one carved with patterns that told the history of the royal family. At the heart of the tallest tower lived Princess Alira, the only daughter of King Vorin from the moment she could walk. Alira's life had been shaped by royal duty. Teachers trained her in diplomacy, law, and the long history of her people. Her mornings were filled with council meetings, her afternoons with speeches and ceremonial appearances. The princess was praised for her grace, her intelligence, and her loyalty to tradition. Yet deep within, she carried a quiet longing for something more. Alira's chambers overlooked the starport where great ships came and went. She often stood at the balcony, watching the vessels rise into the upper atmosphere. She imagined what it would be like to leave Varela and see the many worlds she had read about in the royal library. She wondered what kind of people lived there, what they believed, and what challenges they faced. She wanted to walk among them without titles or guards, to feel the pulse of a life unshaped by crowns and councils. Her father, King Vorin, was a proud ruler who valued order and tradition. He had fought to keep Varela strong through trade and alliances. He believed that the royal family must always place the stability of the realm above personal desires. To him, Alira was the future of Varela, the bridge between the old ways and the new. He never doubted she would one day wear the crown and rule as he did. But Alira's heart was not bound to the throne in the same way. She respected her father's vision. Yet she often felt like a bird raised in a gilded cage. Every step she took was watched by attendants. Every word she spoke in public was weighed for meaning. Even her friendships were chosen carefully to serve political ends. The turning point came during the annual Celestial Exchange, an event where traders and envoys from across the galaxy gathered in the capital. The palace opened its gates to display treasures and technology from faraway worlds. Musicians played songs from different cultures, and the air buzzed with voices speaking dozens of languages. For Alira, it was the most exciting time of the year because it brought strangers to her world. People who carried with them the scent of distant places and the stories of journeys she could only imagine. On the first day of the exchange, Alira walked through the grand hall with her father. She wore the royal colors, and her headpiece glittered in the light everywhere she went. Guests bowed respectfully, and traders presented her with gifts. Yet while her father discussed trade routes and treaties, Alira found her attention drifting toward the open gates that led to the starport beyond the palace walls. Later that evening, after the ceremonies ended, Alira returned to her chambers. She dismissed her attendants early and stood once again on the balcony. The air was cool, and the lights of the city sparkled in the distance. From her high vantage point, she could see the long line of ships docked at the port. Their designs varied greatly. Some were sleek and silver, others wide and industrial. One ship, in particular, caught her attention. It was small compared to the others, painted in muted colors, with patches of repair work along its hull. It looked nothing like the royal vessels she was used to seeing. Alira's curiosity grew stronger. She wondered who owned it, what kind of life they lived, and what kind of freedom came with being able to lift off into the stars without needing permission from anyone. She thought about the stories she had read of ancient explorers, those who set out with little more than courage and a will to discover. The idea stirred something inside her, a quiet but persistent voice that asked, what if you could choose your own path? The next morning, her schedule was full. She attended a council meeting where ministers discussed an upcoming alliance with a neighboring world. They spoke of trade percentages, resource agreements, and ceremonial obligations. Alira listened politely, but her mind kept returning to the sight of that small patched ship at the starport. When the meeting ended, she asked her father if she could tour the starport to greet the arriving traders. King Vorin considered her request. It was not unusual for the princess to be seen at public events during the exchange, but he insisted she take a full escort of guards. Alira agreed without hesitation, hiding her excitement behind the calm smile expected of her by midday. She was walking among the rows of ships. The air was alive with the scent of fuel and the hum of engines. Traders called out to one another. Cargo droids rolled by carrying crates, and the voices of dozens of species mingled together. Her guards stayed close, forming a protective ring around her, but they could not stop her eyes from searching for the patched vessel she had seen from her balcony. She found it near the edge of the port. Up close, it looked even more unusual. The hull bore marks of long journeys, the kind of wear that came from venturing into wild regions of space. A man stood near the ramp, working with a tool on an open panel. He wore simple work clothes, and his hair was swept back from his face by the breeze. He did not seem to notice the princess or her guards at first, too focused on tightening a connection inside the panel. Alira's curiosity overcame her usual restraint. She stepped forward and greeted him. The man looked up, surprised, and his eyes held no fear or deference at the sight of her. Instead, he gave a small, easy smile. He introduced himself as Tomas, a cargo pilot from Earth, and explained that he was repairing a faulty power relay. The conversation that followed was brief but left an impression on Alira. Tomas spoke in a straightforward way, without ceremony, and told her that his ship had seen many worlds, each with its own challenges and wonders. He described deserts where the wind sang through stone arches and frozen moons, where the sky lit up with green fire. Every word painted a picture of a life far from the routines of palace walls. As she left the port with her escort, Alira felt the spark of something new inside her. It was not just curiosity now, it was the beginning of a quiet resolve. Somewhere beyond Varella's shining towers lay the life she had always imagined, and for the first time, she felt the pull to follow it. The next morning, the sun rose over Varella, turning the silver plains into a sea of bright light. Princess Alira sat in her private garden, sipping a warm herbal drink. She was meant to prepare for another day of ceremonies, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the man she met at the starport, Tomas of Earth. His ship, his manner of speaking, and his stories had stayed in her mind. She had met many dignitaries in her life, leaders, generals, scholars, but Tomas was different. He had no titles, no courtly language, yet his words carried the weight of someone who had truly lived. He spoke of his journeys with a sense of freedom that Alira had never known. The more she thought about him, the more she wanted to know. But she knew the royal schedule would not allow her to simply walk out of the palace again without reason. Her father valued her presence at every event during the celestial exchange. Still, Alira was not without resources. That afternoon, she visited the palace archives. She told the attendants she needed information on the visiting traders for diplomatic purposes. They brought her a large screen filled with details on each vessel docked in the capital. She quickly found Tomas's ship listed as the Star Seeker, a registered cargo vessel from the Terran Free Systems. It was permitted to carry trade goods and small passengers, operating mostly in independent sectors. The record noted that Tomas often transported supplies to colonies far from the central trade routes. Alira imagined those distant worlds quiet, settlements on the edge of known space, where every day brought new challenges. It sounded nothing like the measured and orderly life of the palace. By evening, she had formed a plan. The next day, she would join the delegation visiting the starport again, this time with a formal reason to speak to Tomas. She told herself it was only to learn more about human trade practices for the council, but in her heart, she knew it was more than that. The following day, the royal convoy moved through the city toward the starport. Alira's guards kept their usual careful distance, their expressions alert but calm. The air was filled with the sound of ship engines, loading cranes, and traders bargaining over goods. As the princess walked among them, her eyes scanned for the patched hull of the Star Seeker. She spotted it near the same landing bay as before. Tomas was standing beside a stack of cargo crates, speaking with another trader. When he saw Alira, his expression showed brief surprise, followed by that same easy smile. He stepped forward and greeted her respectfully, but without the deep bow most people offered. Alira introduced herself properly this time, giving her name and title. Tomas nodded but did not seem overwhelmed by her status. Instead, he asked if she had come to see more of the ships. "I wanted to hear more about your journeys," she said. "Your stories yesterday were unlike anything I have heard in the palace." Tomas leaned against one of the crates, thinking for a moment before answering. He spoke of a mining colony on a frozen moon where he once delivered supplies. The settlers lived under a great dome to keep out the bitter cold. They faced storms so strong that even the strongest buildings shook. Yet, despite the danger, they welcomed him with food and warmth. He told her about a desert world where travelers navigated by the stars, because there were no landmarks for hundreds of kilometers. He described the sound of wind through the canyons, and the sight of two suns setting at once, filling the sky with gold and crimson light. Alira listened closely, picturing each place as he described it. She asked questions about the people he met, the challenges they faced, and the reasons they lived so far from the central worlds. Tomas explained that many sought a fresh start. Away from the control of large governments, they built their lives with their own hands, relying on courage and determination to survive. At one point, Alira asked, "In Earth, what is it like?" Tomas's eyes brightened. He spoke of green forests that stretched for days, oceans that move like living things, and cities filled with people from every background imaginable. He described how humans had spread far beyond their home world, carrying their ideas and their will to adapt wherever they went. Hearing about Earth stirred something deep in Alira. She had been taught that Varela was one of the great worlds of the galaxy, yet it seemed that humans had achieved greatness through sheer effort and unity rather than long-standing power. Their conversation lasted longer than she expected. The guards shifted uneasily, clearly aware that her time at the port was stretching beyond the planned schedule. Finally, one of them approached and reminded her of the next official engagement. Alira looked at Tomas. "Perhaps I will see you again before the exchange ends." Tomas gave a small nod. "My ship will be here for a few more days. If you wish to talk again, you will know where to find me." As she walked back to the palace with her escort, Alira felt a strange mix of excitement and restlessness. The vastness of the galaxy no longer felt like a distant idea from books. It felt close, within reach, if only she dared to take a step toward it. That night, she sat by her window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere beyond those towers, Tomas was preparing for his next journey. She imagined herself on that patched ship, watching the stars drift past as new worlds awaited. The thought refused to leave her mind. The following days of the celestial exchange passed quickly, but for Princess Alira, each day felt more alive than the ones before. Every morning began with her official duties, greeting foreign guests, listening to trade proposals, and attending banquets filled with polite conversation. Yet, in her mind, she counted the hours until she could return to the starport. Alira had found reasons to visit the port almost every day. Sometimes she went with a group of ministers to check on incoming goods. Other times she joined an inspection of security measures. No matter the official reason, her true goal was always the same: to speak with Tomas again. Their conversations grew longer each time. Tomas spoke with ease, telling her about his travels in a way that made even the smallest details seem important. He told her about a distant asteroid colony where children learned to walk in low gravity, laughing as they bounced higher than they could on any planet. He described a jungle world filled with trees so tall that their tops disappeared into clouds. The air there was heavy and warm, and the ground glowed faintly at night from tiny living lights hidden among the roots. In return, Alira shared stories of Varela. She spoke of the silver plains that sang in the wind, the glowing crystal towers of the capital, and the great festivals where the skies filled with thousands of floating lights. Tomas listened intently, sometimes asking questions about Varelan customs or the ways her people navigated the stars. One afternoon, while they sat on a crate near the Star Seeker, Tomas asked her a question that caught her off guard. "Do you enjoy being a princess?" Alira hesitated. She had been asked similar questions before, but always by people expecting a formal and polished answer. Tomas's tone, however, was different. It was not filled with ceremony or flattery. He simply wanted the truth. I am proud to serve my people, she said slowly, but my life has always been chosen for me. Every day is planned before it begins. Every path is decided before I take the first step. Tomas studied her for a moment before replying. Out here, in the free sectors, you choose your own path. It is not easy, but it is yours. His words stayed with her long after they parted. That day, that night, she lay awake in her chambers, thinking about what it would mean to truly choose her own path. The palace offered safety, comfort, and power, but it also carried walls made of duty, expectation, and unspoken rules, too. Days later, Alir arrived at the starport early in the morning. The sun had just risen, and the light reflected off the ships, casting long shadows on the landing platforms. She found Tomas loading a shipment of medical supplies onto his ship. You work early, she remarked. Tomas smiled. When you travel, as much as I do, you learn to use every hour. Alira helped carry a small crate up the ramp. Ignoring the puzzled looks from her guards inside, the Star Seeker was compact but organized. The control panels showed signs of long use, yet every switch and display was clean and functional. The seats were worn but comfortable, and a small table in the corner held a map of the galaxy, marked with bright pins showing the places Tomas had visited. She stood over the map, tracing a line from Varela to the farthest pin. You have been to so many places, and there are still more to see, Tomas said. That is the best part. The galaxy is endless. You never know what you will find on the next world. Alira's eyes rested on a cluster of pins in a region she did not recognize. What is here? Tomas leaned closer. That is the outer reach. Few big governments go there. Most worlds are small colonies or independent stations. They are rougher, but the people there live on their own terms. The idea stirred her curiosity. Even more, she had read about the outer reach in the palace archives, but always in reports that warned of its lack of central control. To her father and the council, it was a place of disorder. To Tomas, it seemed like a place of opportunity. They spent the next hour talking about the challenges of space travel, the need to plan routes carefully, the importance of keeping a ship in good repair, and the way crews formed bonds stronger than family when they faced dangers together. Alira found herself imagining what it would be like to be part of such a crew, relying on skill and trust rather than titles and tradition. Before she left that day, Tomas handed her a small object. It was a smooth stone with a faint blue swirl running through it. This is from a moon in the outer reach, he explained. The settlers there give one to every traveler who visits. They say it is a reminder that no matter how far you go, you always carry the memory of where you have been. Alira closed her fingers round the stone. Thank you. I will keep it over the next few days. Her bond with Tomas deepened. She learned about his life before he became a pilot, how he grew up on a small farming world, how he saved enough credits to buy his first ship, and how he never stopped moving once he started exploring. In turn, Tomas learned more about her hidden thoughts. She told him about her dream to see other worlds, her frustration with the palace's strict rules, and her fear that if she stayed, she would never know what she might have become. Their talks became the part of the day she looked forward to most. When she was with Tomas, she felt like herself, not the princess, not the symbol of the crown, but simply Alira. Yet, in the background, the celestial exchange was drawing to an end. Soon, the traders would leave, including Tomas, and with his departure, the chance to see the galaxy might slip away again. The thought left her unsettled. For the first time in her life, she began to wonder what it would mean to step away from the path laid out for her and take one of her own choosing. The final days of the celestial exchange arrived, and the palace was busier than ever. Visitors from across the galaxy filled the great halls, bringing gifts, final trade proposals, and offers of alliances. King Vorn moved from meeting to meeting, ensuring every deal strengthened Varela's position among the stars. Princess Alira attended the events as expected, her smile calm, her words measured. Yet inside, she felt a growing heaviness. She knew that soon Tomas would leave with the Star Seeker. and the chance to see the galaxy with her own eyes would vanish. Each time she looked toward the city's starport from the palace balcony, she imagined the moment his ship would rise into the sky and disappear into the distance. That evening, after a long banquet, King Vorn asked Alira to join him in his private council chamber. The room was quiet, lit by the soft glow of crystal lamps. Maps of trade routes covered the walls, and the royal crest hung behind the king's seat. "I have news that will shape our future," the king said. "The Council of Seven Worlds has agreed to an alliance through marriage. You will be wed to Prince Rowland of Trevis. This bond will ensure lasting peace and shared prosperity between our worlds." Alira's heart sank. She had met Prince Rowland once, years ago. He was polite and proper, but their meeting had been formal and distant. She had felt no connection to him, no spark of understanding. "Father," she said carefully, "this is a great responsibility, but I must ask, do I have no choice in the matter?" King Vorn's gaze was steady. "You are the heir to Varela. Your choices must always serve the realm. This marriage will strengthen our position in the galaxy. It is not about personal feelings. It is about duty." Alira lowered her eyes. She had heard such words before, but they had never felt so heavy. She thought of Tomas, of the stories he had told her about people who shaped their own destinies. Compared to that freedom, the path her father was setting before her felt like a cage closing around her. Over the next 2 days, preparations for the alliance announcement began. Couriers carried messages to Trevis, and palace staff planned a public ceremony. Alira moved through the halls with the grace expected of her, but her mind was elsewhere. She still visited the starport when she could, speaking with Tomas in stolen moments. She told him about the marriage arrangement, though she avoided the deeper truth of how much it troubled her. Tomas listened without interruption. When she finished, he leaned back against a crate, his arms folded. "You are not asking my advice," he said, "but I will give it anyway. Life is short, even for those who live long. You can choose to follow a path laid for you, or you can make one of your own. Both have costs. The question is which cost you are willing to bear." Alira stayed silent for a moment, his words echoing in her mind. On the final day of the exchange, King Vorn hosted a farewell gathering for the traders and envoys. The great hall was filled with music and laughter, yet Alira felt as if she were watching from a distance. She saw Tomas only briefly across the room before he slipped away. Later that night, she went to the balcony outside her chambers. The city was quiet, the lights of the starport shining in the distance. She could see the Star Seeker among the other ships, its patched hull catching the glow of the docking lights. Tomorrow, it would be gone. The thought struck her with sudden clarity. If she stayed, she would marry Prince Rowland and live a life defined by duty. If she left, she would face the unknown hardship, danger, and uncertainty, but also the freedom to choose her own way. The decision was not simple. She loved her people and respected her father, yet she also knew that living without choice would leave her with a different kind of emptiness. In the quiet of the night, she whispered to herself, "I cannot give up my life before I have truly lived it." The sound of footsteps drew her from her thoughts. It was her attendant, a young woman named Mira, who had served her since childhood. Mira bowed slightly. "Your Highness, I have seen the way you look at the stars. If you mean to follow them, I will help you." Alira studied her friend. "Do you understand what that means?" "Yes," Mira replied. "It means you will not be here when the wedding is announced. It means the king will send ships to search for you. But it also means you will be free, for the first time in days." Alira felt a spark of hope. She did not answer right away, but her decision was already forming. The next morning, she attended the final council meeting of the exchange. Her father spoke proudly of the upcoming alliance. The ministers discussed new trade routes and resource agreements. Alira listened in silence, her mind fixed on the plan taking shape in her heart. That night, before the palace guards changed shifts, she would leave her chambers, take the narrow servants' passages, and reach the lower gates. From there, Mira would guide her through the city to the starport. If everything went as planned, she would reach the Star Seeker before it launched. The thought filled her with fear and excitement in equal measure. She had never broken the rules of the palace before, never defied her father's will in such a way. But she also knew that once she stepped onto Tomas's ship, there would be no turning back. The palace was quiet at night. Soft lanterns glowed along the corridors, and the sound of the wind across the silver plains whispered faintly through the open windows. Princess Alira sat at her writing desk, staring at a blank sheet of parchment. She had tried for hours to write a letter to her father, but the words refused to come. She knew what she was about to do would break his trust. Yet the thought of staying and surrendering her life to a path she did not choose filled her with a deep sadness. The stone Tomas had given her sat beside her hand. She picked it up, feeling its smooth surface and the faint blue swirl within. It reminded her of the promise of other worlds, of the vastness waiting beyond Varela. Mira entered quietly, carrying a small bundle. "These are travel clothes," she said. "Plain enough that no one will notice you." Alira rose from her seat and took the clothes. They were simple, made from durable fabric, the kind worn by traders and port workers. She changed quickly, leaving behind her royal garments and jewels. When she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. "Are you sure?" Mira asked. "I have never been more sure of anything." Alira replied. They moved swiftly through the palace. Mira led her through narrow service halls where the footsteps of the night guards could not reach them. The passages twisted and turned, taking them deeper into the lower levels. At last, they reached a small side gate that opened into the city. Streets. The night air was cool, and the city beyond the palace walls was alive with quiet activity. Traders moved carts of goods, and distant lights from the starport shone like a beacon. Mira walked beside her, keeping to the shadows whenever guards passed. When they reached the edge of the starport district, Mira stopped. "This is as far as I can go. If I go with you, they will know I helped. You must be careful, Alira." Alira took her friend's hands. "I will never forget what you have done for me. Thank you." With a final nod, Mira slipped back into the shadows, leaving Alira to continue alone. She walked toward the docking bays, her heart beating fast. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been: the hiss of engines cooling, the clank of cargo crates being stacked, the low voices of traders negotiating. She found the Star Seeker at the far end of the landing row. Tomas was outside, tightening a strap on a cargo net. He looked up as she approached, surprise clear on his face. "Alira, what are you doing here at this hour?" "I am coming with you," she said simply. Tomas stared at her for a moment, as if weighing her words. "You know what that means. If you leave now, you cannot go back to your old life." "I know," she said. "But my old life is not the life I want. I cannot stay in a cage when there is an entire galaxy to see." Tomas studied her expression, then gave a small nod. "Then we should move quickly. My ship leaves within the hour." He guided her up the ramp into the Star Seeker. The inside was just as she remembered: compact, practical, and alive with the quiet hum of its systems. She took a seat in the co-pilot's chair while Tomas ran through the pre-launch checks. Through the cockpit window, she could see the starport's control towers and the faint curve of Varela's horizon. The engines began to warm, their steady vibration running through the floor beneath her feet. As Tomas spoke to the docking control over the comms, a sudden voice cut through the night outside. "There she is, the princess." Alira's chest tightened. Across the docking bay, two of the palace guards were running toward the Star Seeker. Behind them, more figures were closing in. The king's search had begun sooner than she expected. Tomas's voice was calm. "Hold on." He flipped a series of switches, and the ship's engines roared to life. The Star Seeker began to lift. From the ground, its landing struts retracting. The guards shouted orders, but it was too late. With a sharp burst from the thrusters, the ship rose higher, clearing the docking bay. Alira gripped the armrests as the city lights fell away beneath them. The silver plains stretched out into the darkness, and the sky above shifted from deep blue to black, the stars emerging like scattered jewels. When they broke through the upper atmosphere, Tomas turned to her. "You are past the point of no return now, still sure." Alira looked out at the endless expanse before them. I have never been more sure. Tomas smiled faintly and set the course for their first jump. Then welcome to your new life among the stars. The ship's systems. Humna's coordinates were locked in. Alira sat back, her heart still racing, but a deep sense of freedom settling over her. For the first time, the horizon was not a line she could only look at, it was a place she could reach. Varela grew smaller on the display as they climbed higher into space. The crystal towers of the capital, the silver plains, the lights of the star portal of it was fading behind her. Ahead lay the unknown. She thought of her father. She knew he would be furious, and that he might send ships after her. Yet she also knew that her decision had been the right one for her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would be hers to face. The Star Seeker entered its jump sequence. The stars outside stretched into long streaks of light, and then the view shifted entirely. They were in another part of space now, far from Varela, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the galaxy. Alira rested her hand on the small stone in her pocket. Feeling its smooth surface, she had taken her first step into a wider universe, and there was no going back. The Star Seeker glided through the vast stretch of space, leaving Varela far behind. Inside the cockpit, the gentle hum of the engines and the soft beeps from the control panels filled the air. Alira sat in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes fixed on the stars that drifted past. She still felt the rush of leaving the palace, the city, and the life she had always known. Tomas focused on the navigation display, adjusting their course toward a small trade hub on the edge of the inner territories. "We will stop at Haven Station," he said. "It is a safe place to take on supplies and rest before we travel farther." Alira nodded, though her mind was still busy with thoughts. Every decision from this moment forward was her own. That was exciting, but also frightening. She had no guards, no advisors, and no palace walls around her. She was stepping into a life she had only imagined, for the first time since they launched. Tomas leaned back in his seat and looked at her. "You did not hesitate back there, even when the guards were running toward us. Most people would have frozen. I could not freeze." Alira said, "If I had, I would be back in the palace right now, preparing for a wedding I did not want. I only thought about moving forward." Tomas gave a small nod of approval. Forward is the right direction. Hours passed as they traveled through the quiet lanes of space. Tomas showed her how to read the basic displays, fuel levels, shield strength, and navigation markers. Alira learned quickly, surprising him with how fast she understood the controls. She asked questions about every button and switch, eager to know what each one did. By the time they reached Haven Station, the blackness of space was dotted with bright lights ahead. The station was a massive structure, shaped like a ring around a central hub. Dozens of ships of different shapes and sizes were docked along its outer edges. As they approached, a calm voice came over the comms. "Star Seeker, this is Haven Station Control. You are cleared to dock at Bay 12. Tomas guided the ship in smoothly, locking the clamps with a dull thud. Once the systems powered down, he turned to Alira. "Welcome to your first stop in the galaxy." Stepping out of the ship, Alira found herself surrounded by sights and sounds unlike anything in the capital. Merchants called out prices for goods. Travelers hurried past with crates, and smells of unfamiliar food drifted through the air. There were species she had never seen before, tall beings with translucent skin, short ones with wide eyes and quick movements, and humans from worlds she could not name. Tomas led her through the main market, explaining how traders from all corners of the galaxy came here to exchange goods without interference from major governments. Alira was fascinated by the variety of rows of glowing minerals, tables of hand-woven fabrics, crates of fresh fruit from distant planets, while Tomas spoke with a supplier about engine parts. Alira wandered a few steps away, drawn to a stall selling small handcrafted items. An older merchant greeted her warmly and placed a carved wooden pendant in her hand. The design was simple yet beautiful, shaped like a star. "It is a symbol of the first traveler," the merchant explained, a reminder that every great journey begins with a single step. Alira smiled and bought the pendant, slipping it around her neck. It felt like a sign, a piece of her new life taking shape. When she returned to the Star Seeker, Tomas had already loaded fresh supplies. He glanced at the pendant and raised an eyebrow. "Looks like you are starting to collect souvenirs." "I like to keep reminders," she said. "One day, I will have many." They set off again, this time heading toward the outer reach. The stars around them grew fewer as they moved into less traveled space. Navigation beacons were rare here, and the routes were longer between stops. 2 days into the journey, they received a distress signal. The message was faint but clear enough to understand. A small cargo vessel was stranded near a drifting asteroid field, its engines failing. Tomas checked their position. "It is not far off course. We can help them." Alira's pulse quickened. This would be her first real test away from the palace. She followed Tomas to the controls, watching as he plotted the approach. When they reached the coordinates, the stranded vessel came into view. Its lights flickered, and its hull bore scorch marks. Tomas held the crew and offered assistance. They reported that a power conduit had burned out, leaving them adrift. Tomas brought the Star Seeker close and connected a tow cable, while the ships were linked. He opened the engineering bay and handed Alira a toolkit. "Come with me. You will see how repairs are done in the field." Inside the stranded ship, the air smelled faintly of smoke. Tomas located the damaged conduit and explained how to replace it. Alira listened carefully, holding tools, fetching parts, and even fitting one of the new connectors herself. When the power systems came back online, the grateful crew thanked them repeatedly. As they left, Alira felt a rush of satisfaction. She had helped fix a real problem, not through speeches or ceremony, but through direct action. Back aboard the Star Seeker, Tomas glanced at her. "You learn fast. That is good. Out here, everyone has to pull their weight. I want to learn more," she said without hesitation. They continued toward the outer reach, the space ahead wide and open. Alira felt stronger than she had when she left Varela. She had faced uncertainty, worked with her own hands, and begun to see the galaxy not as a distant dream, but as a place she could truly live in. As the stars stretched before them, she realized she was no longer only escaping the life she had left behind. She was building a new one. The Star Seeker moved steadily through the quiet space of the outer reach. The stars here were fewer but brighter, shining against the dark emptiness like distant fires. Princess Alira watched the view from the cockpit window, feeling calm but alert. Her journey had changed her. She was no longer the girl who stood behind crystal walls in a distant palace. She was a traveler now, free to choose her own way. Tomas adjusted their course toward a small mining colony called Kreska. It was a tough place. Far from the safety of big worlds, the colony's people worked hard to bring rare minerals from deep beneath the surface. Many ships passed through to bring supplies or take cargo away. When the Star Seeker landed on Kreska's dusty platform, Alira stepped out with Tomas. The air was thick with dust and the low hum of machines. People moved quickly, dressed in heavy suits and helmets, faces tired but determined. Alira felt the weight of the colony's hard life. This was not a place of shining towers or grand ceremonies. Here, every day was a struggle against the land and the cold silence of space. But there was strength in it too, a quiet pride in what they built with their own hands. Tomas led her to the colony's leader, a tall woman named Marak. She was strong and serious, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "We have heard of your help in the asteroid field," Marak said, nodding to Alira. "You have the spirit of those who do not wait for life to come to them. You make your own path." Alira smiled, feeling warmth in the praise. "I want to learn from people like you, to see how life is lived beyond the palace." Marak gestured toward the mining shafts. "Come, I will show you." They walked into the tunnels, where the walls glowed faintly from the minerals inside. Machines rumbled as miners worked, extracting precious stones that shone like stars in the dim light. Alira watched the miners carefully. They moved with skill and care, each person a vital part of the team. Tomas explained how they repaired their machines and kept the colony alive. One miner, a young man named Joran, showed her how to handle a small tool used to check for weak spots in the rock. Alira held it carefully, feeling the cold metal in her hands. It is harder than it looks, she admitted. Jorn laughed softly. You have courage. That counts for more than skill sometimes. Days passed quickly as Alira worked alongside the miners. She learned how to handle tools, how to read the rock formations, and how to stay calm when dust filled the air. At night, under the clear black sky, she and Tomas sat outside the colony, watching the stars. Do you regret leaving your old life? Tomas asked. Alira shook her head. No, I have found something I never knew I wanted, a life where I make my own choices. It is not easy, but it is real. Tomas smiled. That is what makes a traveler strong, the courage to face the unknown and keep moving forward. The news of the princess's disappearance had reached King Vorn weeks ago. His pride was hurt, but beneath it was worry for his daughter's safety. Ships were sent to search the space lanes near Varela, but none could find the Star Seeker. In the palace, officials debated what to do next. Some argued for more forceful action. Others warned that chasing Alira might damage their alliances. King Vorn sat in silence one evening, staring at a star map. He thought of his daughter, the bright girl who had once dreamed of the stars. Though he could not understand her choice, he knew one truth. Alira's spirit was strong and free, just like Varela's. Back on Kreska, Alira stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the vast desert below. The wind carried dust and the scent of distant rain. She held the smooth blue stone Tomas had given her, feeling its cool surface. This is where my journey truly begins, she whispered. Tomas joined her, standing quietly beside her. You have a place here if you want it, but the galaxy is wide. There are many more worlds to see. Alira smiled, her eyes shining with determination. I will see them all. I want to learn, to grow, and to help those who need it. In that moment, she was no longer a princess running from her past. She was a leader in her own right, strong, wise, and ready to face whatever the future held. The Star Seeker awaited, ready to carry her to new adventures, with Tomas by her side and the stars ahead. Alira's heart was full of hope. The galaxy was vast, but she was ready. Her journey had only just begun.